A bullied teen saved a stray kitten, never knowing it would one day rescue him right back. The thought never crossed Ethan's mind as he huddled beneath the park's ancient oak tree, rain dripping from his swollen eye while a tiny ball of matted fur mewled pathetically beside him. The mid-October downpour matched Ethan's mood perfectly. Cold, relentless, merciless. He'd fled from school after the third beating this week, this one worse than the others. Connor Daniels and his friends had cornered him behind the gym, far from any teachers or security cameras. The metallic taste of blood still lingered on his tongue, mixing with the salt of tears he refused to acknowledge. At 16, Ethan Carter had perfected the art of invisibility, or so he thought. Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact. Blend into the wall. Simple rules for survival at Westfield High. Yet somehow he remained Connor's favorite target. 4 years of torment had taught him that fighting back only made things worse. Running was safer. Always running. The pitiful sound came again, barely audible over the rain. Ethan wiped his face with his sleeve, wincing as the fabric brushed against his bruised cheekbone. There beside the tree's massive root huddled something even more pathetic than himself. A kitten, so small it could fit in his palm, shivered violently in a shallow puddle. Its fur, what little wasn't caked with mud, appeared to be a dingy orange. One ear was torn, and when it looked up at Ethan, he saw one eye was sealed shut with infection. "Hey," he whispered, his voice sounding foreign even to himself. When was the last time he'd spoken aloud outside of class? "You're having a rough day too, huh?" The kitten tried to stand but collapsed back into the muddy water. Something in Ethan's chest tightened. Here was a creature even more helpless, even more broken than himself. He shrugged off his jacket despite the chill and reached for the kitten. It hissed weakly, more fear than fight. "I won't hurt you," Ethan murmured, wrapping the trembling animal in his jacket. "I know what that feels like." The irony wasn't lost on him. His mother had begged him to tell her what was happening at school, why his clothes were torn, why he came home with unexplained bruises. But the words stayed locked inside him, a shameful secret he couldn't voice. Yet here he was, talking to a half-dead kitten as if it could understand. Home was a 15-minute walk. A small, tidy house where his mother worked double shifts to keep them afloat since his father's departure 3 years ago. She wouldn't be home for hours. The kitten shivered against his chest, its tiny heart racing beneath paper-thin ribs. "You need help," Ethan mumbled, changing direction toward the veterinary clinic 6 blocks away. "Doctor." Reynolds had treated their ancient Labrador, Max, before old age finally claimed him last winter. The memory of Max, loyal, protective Max, who would have torn Connor Daniels to pieces for touching Ethan, brought a fresh wave of grief. The bell above the clinic door jingled cheerfully, mocking the seriousness of his mission. The waiting room was empty except for a woman with a carrier containing what looked like an enormous rabbit. "Ethan?" Amy, the receptionist, peered at him with concern. Her eyes widened at his face. "What happened to you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he lied automatically. "But this little guy isn't." He carefully opened his jacket to reveal the kitten, now barely moving. "Oh my goodness." Amy was around the desk in seconds. "Doctor, Reynolds is with a patient, but..." She gently took the bundle from his arms. "This baby needs help right away." 20 minutes later, Ethan sat in the exam room while Dr. Reynolds, a tall woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, examined the kitten. Male, approximately 8 weeks old. Severely dehydrated, malnourished. Eye infection, ear mites, intestinal parasites. "He's in rough shape," she said, her voice matter-of-fact but not unkind. Ethan's heart sank. "Will he make it?" "Doctor, Reynolds glanced up, her gaze lingering on Ethan's own injuries before returning to the kitten. "He's a fighter. I can see that much. But he'll need medication, special food, and a lot of care." She paused. "Are you planning to keep him?" The question caught him off guard. He hadn't thought beyond getting the kitten help. I don't know. I didn't really plan. The shelter's overcrowded." She continued, administering an injection that made the kitten mew weakly. A kitten in this condition? Well, his chances wouldn't be good there. Ethan stared at the tiny creature on the metal table. So small, so vulnerable, so much like himself. Yet even in its weakened state, it had hissed at him, tried to fight. It had more courage than he did. "I'll keep him," he said suddenly, surprising himself. "I'll figure it out." "Doctor." Reynolds smiled for the first time. "Good choice. Now, about your face." "I fell," Ethan said automatically. "Sir, skateboarding." She didn't believe him, that was clear from her expression, but she didn't press. Instead, she handed him an antiseptic wipe. "Clean that cut at least. And put ice on the eye when you get home." By the time Ethan left the clinic, his wallet was empty. The antibiotics, special food, and supplies had cost everything he'd saved from his weekend job at the local grocery store. But the kitten, nestled in a cardboard carrier with a small heating pad, was purring weakly, the sound barely audible. "You need a name," Ethan told him as they walked home through the now drizzling rain. "Something tough." He considered the kitten's orange fur, now visible after Dr. Reynolds had gently cleaned him. "Rusty? No, too common. Phoenix? Too pretentious." The kitten blinked his one good eye. "How about Chance? Everyone deserves a second chance, right?" His mother was still out when Ethan arrived home. He set up the kitten's supplies in his bathroom, following Dr. Reynolds' instructions meticulously. Chance needed medication every 6 hours, including through the night. He needed to be kept warm, fed small amounts frequently. "This is going to be our secret for now," Ethan told the kitten as he carefully administered the eye drops. "Mom's allergic to cats. Not severely, but enough that she always said no pets after Max. I'll figure something out." That night, after his mother had checked on him, gasping at his face despite his skateboarding story, Ethan lay awake, listening to the tiny sounds of Chance moving in his makeshift bed. Taking care of something so vulnerable felt strangely empowering. For the first time in years, someone needed him. The next few weeks established a new routine. Ethan woke early to care for Chance before school. He rushed home afterward to check on him, keeping the bathroom door firmly closed and explaining away the occasional meows as videos he was watching. At night, he often brought the kitten into his bed, finding comfort in the small, warm body curled against his neck. Chance transformed with remarkable speed. His infected eye healed, revealing a brilliant green that matched his healthy one. His torn ear remained permanently notched but gave him a rakish, scrappy appearance. His orange fur grew lustrous, with subtle stripes that appeared in the sunlight. And his personality emerged, playful, fearless, affectionate in his own terms. "You don't take any crap, do you?" Ethan marveled one afternoon as Chance fearlessly attacked a rolled-up sock, growling and kicking with his back legs. "Wish I could be more like you." School remained hell. Connor seemed determined to make Ethan's junior year his worst yet. The physical attacks had decreased slightly. Too many bruises had finally prompted a teacher to ask questions. But the psychological torment intensified. Whispered threats, sabotaged assignments, cruel social media posts from anonymous accounts that everyone knew were Connor's. One particularly bad day, after Connor had accidentally spilled cafeteria chili all over Ethan's only pair of decent jeans, Ethan came home fighting tears. He found Chance waiting impatiently by the bathroom door. "Hey, buddy," he whispered, scooping up the now sturdy kitten. Chance bumped his head against Ethan's chin, purring loudly. The simple acceptance in that gesture broke something in Ethan. He sank to the floor, cradling the kitten while silent sobs shook his body. Chance didn't squirm away as he usually did when Ethan held him too long. Instead, he settled into Ethan's lap, purring more intensely, occasionally reaching up a paw to touch Ethan's face. The unconditional companionship was a balm Ethan hadn't known he needed. "Mom's going to find out about you eventually," Ethan told Chance that night as the kitten pounced on his homework. "You're getting too big to hide. Plus, you knocked over her favorite plant yesterday." He scratched behind Chance's notched ear. "I need to come clean." The conversation with his mother went better than expected. Sarah Carter was exhausted from her shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse, but her expression softened when Ethan finally blurted out the whole story. Well, the parts about finding Chance, at least. He still couldn't bring himself to tell her about Connor. "You've been hiding a cat in your bathroom for 3 weeks?" she asked, incredulous. Then to his surprise, she laughed. "Oh, Ethan, I wondered why you suddenly became so interested in cleaning your own bathroom." "You're not mad?" he asked cautiously. "I know you're allergic, and after Max, my allergies are mild, honey." She sighed, looking at Chance, who was cautiously exploring the living room. "And I've been worried about you. You've been so withdrawn since, well, for a long time. If this little guy makes you happy," she sneezed as if on cue, then smiled ruefully. "We'll make it work, but he's your responsibility." "He already is," Ethan said quietly, watching Chance investigate the couch with scientific precision. With Chance officially a family member, Ethan's home life improved dramatically. The kitten's antics made both him and his mother laugh, something that had been rare in their household. Sarah even bought Chance toys and a proper cat tree, though she claimed they were just to keep him from destroying the furniture. But school remained a nightmare. November brought colder weather and Connor's increasingly volatile temper. Rumors circulated that his parents were divorcing, that his father's drinking had gotten worse. Ethan might have felt sympathy if he wasn't so busy being Connor's preferred punching bag. The incident happened on a Tuesday. Ethan had stayed late to retake a math test, leaving through the deserted east entrance where the overhang provided some shelter from the sleet that had been falling all afternoon. He was halfway to the street when Connor and two of his friends stepped out from behind the dumpsters. "Going somewhere, freak?" Connor's breath clouded in the cold air. His eyes had the glazed look that meant he'd been drinking. Ethan's stomach dropped. He clutched his backpack tighter, calculating his chances of outrunning them in the icy conditions. "Just going home, Connor." "I don't want trouble." "That's too bad," Connor said, moving closer. "Because trouble wants you." What followed was the worst beating Ethan had ever experienced. He tried to fight back this time, landing one solid punch to Connor's jaw that only enraged the bigger boy further. By the time they left him, Ethan lay curled on the wet pavement, tasting blood, certain that something was broken inside him. He didn't remember the walk home. Somehow, muscle memory carried him the 15 blocks to his front door. His keys fumbled in his swollen fingers. Inside, the house was warm and quiet, his mother working late again. Chance appeared immediately, chirping his greeting as always. But when Ethan collapsed onto the couch, the kitten froze, his tail puffing to twice its size. He approached cautiously, sniffing Ethan's bloodied hand. "It's okay," Ethan whispered, his split lip making speech painful. "It's still me." The kitten climbed carefully onto his chest, avoiding the places where Ethan winced. He settled into a tight ball over Ethan's heart, purring with an intensity that seemed to vibrate through Ethan's bruised ribs. The soothing rhythm was hypnotic, and Ethan drifted into unconsciousness with his hand resting on Chance's warm fur. He woke to his mother's horrified gasp. "Ethan! Oh my God!" She was beside him instantly, nurse mode activated. "Well, what happened? Who did this?" For the first time in 4 years, the dam broke. Everything poured out. Connor's relentless bullying, the daily terror, the shameful secret he'd carried alone for so long. Through it all, Chance remained on his chest, occasionally licking Ethan's chin with his rough tongue, as if offering encouragement. The aftermath was a blur. Hospital visits, police reports, school meetings, Connor's suspension, his mother's fury at the school's negligence. Through it all, Ethan felt strangely detached, as if watching someone else's life unfold. The only constant was Chance, who seemed to sense Ethan's need for comfort and stayed closer than usual, sleeping on his pillow each night. December arrived, bringing with it a heavy snowfall and the news that Connor's family was moving after the holidays. His father had taken a job in another state, a fresh start, the rumor said. Ethan felt nothing but numb relief. He returned to school with a new status. Not popularity exactly, but a different kind of visibility. Other victims of Connor's bullying began to nod to him in the hallways. A girl named Maya from his English class asked if he wanted to join her study group. Small changes, but significant. At home, Chance continued to grow, his kittenish clumsiness giving way to feline grace. He developed a routine of racing through the house at midnight, skidding on the hardwood floors and launching himself at impossible targets. He learned to open cabinet doors and developed a peculiar obsession with water, often joining Ethan in the bathroom to paw at the shower curtain until Ethan let him in to bat at the water droplets. Christmas came and went. January brought a new semester and gradually a new normal. Ethan joined the school newspaper, discovering a talent for photography. He started talking more in class, small steps toward a different life. But nightmares plagued him. Vivid dreams where Connor returned, where the beatings started again, where no one believed him. He would wake gasping, sheets twisted around his legs, sweat cooling on his skin despite the winter chill. On those nights, Chance was always there, purring against his neck or patting his face with a gentle paw until the panic subsided. The cat's steady presence was an anchor, a reminder that he wasn't alone anymore. "I saved you," Ethan whispered one night after a particularly bad dream, stroking Chance's soft fur. "But sometimes I think you're the one saving me." February brought an unexpected development. Ethan's photography teacher entered one of his photos in a regional contest. A striking image of Chance silhouetted in the window, watching snowfall. The photo won first place, earning Ethan a small scholarship and publication in a local arts magazine. "You're famous," he told Chance, who responded by knocking Ethan's water glass off the table with deliberate precision. Spring arrived gradually, melting away the last traces of winter. Ethan turned 17. He had acquaintances now, if not close friends. Maya from the study group sometimes sat with him at lunch. He had joined a photography club that met on weekends. Small victories. Then came the fire. It started in the middle of the night. An electrical short in the aging wiring of their kitchen wall. Ethan woke to the smell of smoke and Chance standing on his chest, yowling with an urgency he'd never heard before. The cat pawed at his face, claws extended enough to sting but not draw blood. "What?" Ethan began, then coughed as smoke filtered under his door. The familiar cold grip of panic seized his chest. "Mom!" he shouted, scrambling out of bed. The hallway was hazy with smoke, the downstairs glowing with an ominous orange light. Chance darted between his legs, racing toward his mother's bedroom door, yowling continuously. Sarah was still asleep, the white noise machine she used to help her sleep after night shifts masking the sounds of the developing fire. Ethan shook her awake, and together they stumbled toward the stairs, only to find flames already consuming the lower half. "Back door!" Sarah gasped, pulling Ethan toward the rear of the house where a small deck offered an alternative exit. Chance led the way, his orange fur almost invisible against the smoke. They made it outside just as the fire trucks arrived, alerted by a neighbor who had spotted the flames. Standing barefoot in the damp grass, watching as firefighters battled to save what they could of their home, Ethan clutched Chance to his chest. "He woke me up," he told the paramedic who was checking his oxygen levels. If it weren't for him, he couldn't finish the sentence. The reality was too stark, too terrifying. Cats have an incredible sense of smell, the paramedic said, smiling at Chance, who was now calmly grooming himself in Ethan's lap, as if he hadn't just saved 2 lives. "They can detect smoke long before humans. You've got yourself a hero there." A hero. Ethan looked down at the former stray he'd found huddled in the rain, half dead and utterly alone. The kitten he'd saved on a day when he could barely save himself. Now 6 months later, roles reversed, debts repaid in the most profound way possible. A bullied teen saved a stray kitten, never knowing it would one day rescue him right back. The thought that had never crossed his mind that rainy October afternoon now seemed like the most obvious truth in the world. The house was severely damaged but not destroyed. Insurance would cover most of the repairs, but they would need to stay elsewhere for several months during reconstruction. Sarah's hospital colleague offered them her guest house, a small but comfortable space behind her main home, where fortunately, pets were welcome. In the strange new environment, Chance became Ethan's constant. While everything else had changed, his home, his routine, even his school temporarily as they relocated to his aunt's district until repairs were complete, Chance remained the same affectionate, mischievous presence. "You know what's weird?" Ethan said to Maya one day as they worked on a joint photography project. He'd finally told her the whole story: Connor, the bullying, finding Chance, the fire. "If Connor hadn't beaten me up that day, I would have taken a different route home. I never would have found Chance under that tree, and you both would have died in the fire," Maya finished softly. She looked at the photos they were sorting. Several featured Chance in various poses, his notched ear and bright eyes giving him a perpetually curious expression. "It's like the universe has this crazy way of balancing things." Ethan considered this. He thought about the frightened, broken boy he'd been 6 months ago. The boy who hid bruises and lived in constant fear. The boy who couldn't imagine a future beyond survival. Now he had college applications in progress, a photography portfolio, something like friends, plans. That evening, sitting on the small porch of the guest house with Chance purring in his lap, Ethan watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, colors that matched Chance's fur in the fading light. "We saved each other," he told the cat, who blinked slowly at him in what Ethan had learned was a cat's way of saying, "I love you." Something warm expanded in his chest, pushing against the walls he'd built around his heart. Sarah joined him, passing him a mug of hot chocolate. She sat beside him, reaching over to stroke Chance's head. The cat permitted this briefly before returning to his grooming routine. "I was looking at the construction schedule today," she said. "They think we can move back in by August, just before your senior year starts." "That's good," Ethan replied, though the thought of returning to Westfield High still triggered a flutter of anxiety in his stomach. Sarah seemed to sense his unease. "You know, Connor's gone, and you're not the same boy you were last year." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know. It's just hard to forget." "Of course it is." She squeezed his shoulder. "But you're stronger now, not just because of what happened with Connor, but because you learned something important." "What's that?" She smiled, watching as Chance stretched dramatically before settling back into Ethan's lap. "That saving something else can sometimes save ourselves. That connection, caring for another being, is healing. Ethan thought about the day he'd found Chance, how taking action to help the kitten had been the first time in years he'd felt something other than fear or numbness. How caring for the tiny creature had given him purpose during his darkest days. How the simple act of responsibility had slowly rebuilt his shattered confidence. And then there was the fire, the debt repaid in full. Life for life. "I think you're right," he said quietly. That night, as Ethan drifted toward sleep with Chance curled in his usual spot beside the pillow, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. From wounded boy and dying kitten to two survivors, bound by something deeper than circumstance. 7 months ago, a bullied teen saved a stray kitten, never knowing it would one day rescue him right back. But the truth was both more complex and simpler than that neat narrative. They had saved each other continuously, day by day, moment by moment, and they would continue to do so, through whatever challenges lay ahead. Chance's purr rumbled softly in the darkness, a sound that had become synonymous with safety, with home. Ethan rested his hand on the cat's warm side, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. "Thank you," he whispered. Chance opened one eye, blinked slowly, then went back to sleep. Some things, after all, needed no explanation.